This. It's good to talk about these things.
Welcome to the studio. Here I have my friend Kavi, and this is what are we called? We called Force of Mother Earth.
Force of Mother Earth.
Force of Mother Earth. And we thought, let's just kick off this series with one of the most knowledgeable person on all things, and just like hear him out. Like if you had 20 years to clean up this planet, how would you go about it? What would you do? And whatever you're going to say, it's on record, it's going to be on the internet, and people will come and find you. So careful what you say. Say clever stuff.
It's clever stuff.
To all of you who are listening or watching or whatever, I haven't done this before. Now we're doing it, and it's cool. Whatever.
Cheers. Thank you.
Let's go.
Wow.
Oh, to enlightenment
Oh, to enlightenment, of course.
of all sentient beings, and let this planet be pure again. Now I'm excited. What you gonna say?
It's quite a stage you've set.
Yeah,
Full
yeah.
of expectation
Yeah,
right from the beginning.
Just for the record, we're sitting in kind of literally in the jungle in Hawaii, and we're having a beautiful glass of wine. It's a nice rosé. It's purpley chilled, and we're talking about how to undo what our friends, the humans, have done to our planet in the last 200 years. And it's not supposed to be extremely clever. It's not supposed to be extremely whatever. It's supposed to be like an honest discussion about what's going on and what could us normal everyday folks do anything useful about reversing the trend and do our little contribution to the cleanup.
This
There
is
we
such an interesting topic to get into because there's so much to it, right? It's just such a big, large topic. And it feels completely overwhelming to even begin to start talking about it. Because, and I like the way you've talked about it before, and we've talked about this a bit, you really have to start to break it down into some core components to really start to make sense of it at all. Just at all, right? Like, you have your whole supply side thing, where everything that somebody consumes shows up somewhere. Like what is it in? What does it leave behind? How does that affect the environment? How does the creation of it affect the environment? How does the shipping of it affect the environment? How does the packaging of it affect the environment? And the disposal. Like there's
Disposal of the product.
all those, you have the mess that's already there, and different ideas or versions of what the mess is or isn't that's already there. You have so many just unspoken things too, I feel. This is so lost.
And what I observed that I have a lot of cool friends from all walks of life, and they have cool little snippets of reality of, oh, I could think of somebody who has done something like this before, and I can think of a country, I can think of a solution, I can think of good things that we just don't know about because it's not publicized, that it doesn't have enough marketing. And people just think like, I don't think we can solve this. And I think, yes, we can. And if you start working on it from the end, okay, in 20 years, this looks very different. It looks clean. Then what are the steps we have to do going backwards that we can already start today without going crazy, without breaking the bank, without doing anything illegal or insane, just to do the little steps that are driving us all into the right direction.
Yeah.
So,
I tend to get obsessed with the supply side just because that's kind of where more and more waste is created and more and more problems are created. It's really great to think about. I do believe there are people out there, and you read about it. People out there creating products, creating like specifically containers, things that are actually compostable, but also harder to be able to meet other needs for container, like for preservation, for transport, and these other opportunities. And that's just a huge part to me. It's just simply because you can do everything in the world to clean up, but if you keep creating and producing more, you're never really.
it's never going to be done.
Yeah, it's almost like it never gets caught up.
It's Sisyphus with the rock boulder up the hill. I can keep doing it. You're going to get super tired, but it's not going to make a difference. And I'm 100% with you. I started from the corner of like, okay, let's figure out how to do the cleanup. But I also realized that my core skills in strategy and transformation and all this stuff and process re-engineering kind of drives my attention towards like, how can we change the processes? How can we actually come up with this whole concept of if you produce something that is in the hands of a non-suspecting civilian turns into trash because you can't control what they are going to do with it, then it becomes a cute question. Okay, well, how far we need to go back up the supply chain? Who are the people we need to talk to? What kind of messages we need to bring to them, and how we can actually focus this effort in the right direction? And is there anybody out there already doing it? Because I believe so. We just haven't met them yet.
Yeah, like that's I feel like there's material scientists that are working to invent or create packaging that can actually compost or break down, and these things show up in the universities, right? It's I don't know. Some of this gets kind of political when you think about it, right? Because you'd almost hope or expect that companies that produce plastics would be looking at solutions to resolve the plastic waste that they're creating, but there's really no like economic advantage to that's necessarily seen. There are initiatives, right, to try to create like green stock pools or green funds, mutual funds
Yes.
that are very very oriented or very very specific around companies that are behaving in this way that are doing well. But it's more about companies that consume being a little more responsible about how they consume, and it's a lot less about just stopping
The production.
the production.
The incorrect production.
And there's not a lot of focus on the companies that are producing the product, producing the problem in a sense.
Okay, and again, I'm
Yeah.
a trained Buddhist, which means that I'm not looking for enmity. I'm looking for unity. I'm looking for a solution that considers the benefit of everybody. And I'm not here to consider, oh, how are we going to ruin
Sure.
the evil companies? I'm looking.
No. Yeah, and I'm not for that at all. Completely, I'm not for that at all.
let me
The thing
finish.
of it is, oh, sorry.
Sorry. No. Just the end of the sentence would be that interesting thing for me is like this is to have profit is totally legit.
Yeah.
To have innovation is absolutely like this. I would say these single-use plastic bottles were absolutely revolutionizing the whole supply chain of many industries, and that's something like the best idea. Now, a couple of decades later, we see, well, you know what? If we actually see the effect of this great idea, the effect is kind of harmful. And I think my quest is how we can change this conversation. How we can say, okay, profit is a good thing. How you can keep your profit, remain productive with your amazing products that you want to give to the world without the harm.
Yeah.
I think that's just a new equation that we need to start using.
Yeah, sure. And I guess like single use plastic may have been revolutionary, but we had single use glass before, and glass is kind of infinitely recyclable. So it could be helpful to see and investigate, I guess, what economic advantages plastic has over glass in transport or cost savings or where it is cost saving.
I think that history rarely goes backwards, and I think glass had its time.
Yeah.
And I think at that time glass was the solution. And then somebody came out with plastic and said, "Brr, this is way better, cheaper, blah blah blah, easier." And then we say, "Oh, great, this is a good idea, but look at the consequences." And then what my interest is like, how do we go next step? Like, what is beyond glass? Plastic. Is there a more creative way of doing the distribution of these products in a different sort of packaging, as you said, that might be compostable, that might be completely different? And again, obviously, I don't have a solution. We would be sitting here if I had a solution, but I would say, how do we actually integrate the previous solutions into a next level solution, which considers the disadvantages of the former solutions?
Well, yeah, but part of looking back at glass versus plastic is trying to like quantify what the economic advantages that plastic had over glass. So we can take these perspectives of economic advantage and see if there are, like, if we want to be moving in the same direction. So let's just assume that the main economic advantage was weight. So there's shipping costs that are reduced because fuel is reduced and all of that from glass to plastic. And that's kind of the only, let's just assume that's the only one for you know.
Okay.
So are we going to be looking to find economic advantage in another weight reduction through some other kind of material that's created? Or are we going to be looking at other ways we might be able to find economic advantage? And one of the great things that's showing up right now, right, since we're in these revolutions of electric cars and all of this, now we're getting closer and closer to electric shipping. The cost of shipping is going to be reduced. It's going to be, I mean,
it's gonna come from a different source,
Mm-hmm.
which we don't know the consequences yet. Because if
Yes.
you say energy is produced with wind turbines and it's produced through solar, it's again, it is in the phase of like, whoa, this is the best idea ever,
Yeah.
because we don't know how long it's gonna take for us to pick
Yeah.
up the trash after these operations, and what's the actual environmental and ecological consequence of this operation. And again, it is better than burning fuel, but we just have not reached to the stage of the life cycle of these solutions where we would actually have an honest assessment of, oh, what are we doing here? But that's not our
So
problem.
no, no, no. It is a different problem, and you're absolutely correct. Like when you look at what it takes to construct an electric vehicle versus a regular vehicle, like a gas powered vehicle, the whole economic cost, the whole environmental cost, is kind of huge, and especially when you have batteries and things that are dependent upon like rare earth metals, it creates so many other economic problems and disadvantages. But I don't know. I guess in a sense you can kind of start to quantify all of these problems and these issues. But where would you find all of this just in one place? Like, right? I almost wish that there was a sprint board or something that we could be working from for these are our economic problems, these are proposed user stories, these are the solutions to each of the user stories, and it really be kind of broken down in
The reason Kavi, my friend, is invited to this conversation because I had like 50 or so of these conversations in the past, and I started putting together like in strategy consulting they call it the issue tree, like all the components of the problem, and on the other side, what could be components of the solution. And this is complicated, and I think at some stage I really have to plug it into AI, and that's also why Kavi is kind of a little more technical than me. And when we start collecting the individual components of the problem, we can start organizing them into structures, and we can see, oh, okay, this is how it contributes to the current problem, and then we can see what kind of countermeasures would be interesting to counterbalance this. And as you said, politics, well,
yeah.
obviously there is going to be a political component of it at some stage. There must be a legal component of it at some stage. I don't know if you know, but there is this process now in California to have special taxation um, for environmentally unfriendly packaging, and kind of have a differentiation for the consumers to say, hey, if you buy
Yeah.
this sort of packaging, that's going to cost you more because it's more harmful for all of us. And I find that like a way forward, which is like an economic and legal um, consideration to alter the behavior of consumers. But I think on my end, I'm like, okay, how can we help companies? And we have some solutions. How can we help companies to? How can we help you think through your whole economic side of it, your whole supply chain, and bring some of these best practices and say, okay, if you know that this is possible, how could it be applied in your company, and how could we actually reduce the wasteful output of your production without jeopardizing your profit or even improving your profit?
Well, extra taxing on packaging like that is kind of meant to be a market force, isn't it? To not just affect the consumers but also the producers,
Yep,
because
absolutely.
if the consumers are incentivized against uh, products that are produced in these
Yep,
like
because
lower
nobody's
quality,
buying them.
well, not yeah, if they can be economically disadvantaged enough, which is an interesting thing because I don't know. I feel like it's so often you see this where you have to have some kind of government regulation just getting into politics to really start to shape industry and start to shape
Yep.
businesses, because as long as you have a pure profit motive, and until you can show like an improved profit by making a change, and the improved profit has to offset any costs in the manufacturing changes, then I mean until you can get all of that done, you can't really like convince somebody to change.
I'm talking 20 years.
Yeah.
And I think and it's important because this shift is not, I mean, I wish it would happen overnight, but it's highly improbable it would happen overnight. So, but there was one of my happy examples is this carpet factory who created these little carpet tiles, and at one stage, the CEO said, "Oh my God, what we're doing here is like so wasteful and
Mm-hmm.
so unfriendly." So they went through the whole production process and they kind of mobilized the whole company and said, "Hey, hey, hey, what can we do here to reduce our waste? How can we reduce our ecological footprint? How can we actually just create a situation where without actually throwing away the products, because the products are good and valuable, how can we just rethink the whole thing with this ideal that we should not harm the planet by producing our otherwise high demand products? And I think I would bring this question to producers of beverages or producers of other fast moving consumer goods that are packaged in ways that, again, once they finish their useful lifetime, they will end up in the dump somewhere, or they will end up in a river, end up in the ocean.
Yeah.
How to use the same principles of, okay, you have a bunch of clever people, you have a product that is demanded, you want to have your margins protected. Now, how do you get creative to, within these boundaries, recreate the operations and recreate the production?
Well, that's a top-down approach. Like if you have somebody in leadership that is actually interested in this.
True.
So, I mean, I guess you could try to get green people into these massive corporations to start pushing some of those changes.
I would, again,
Or even kind of start to move, some of the groups, like building groups around that might draw in some of these executives, some exclusive groups.
Yep, exclusive groups. No, I absolutely love the idea, and I think so. We have like broad networks globally, different clubs. You probably know a few of them, and they're like sometimes they're a little elitic, sometimes they're exclusive, but most of them, or many of them, have a pro-social intent, and they look after social good in the forms of I don't know, disease prevention or building stuff for local communities and supporting good local causes. So that could be a vehicle, and they're usually reasonably well connected. But what you said within the companies, I also think that I don't think it's just you and I who's thinking about this thing.
No,
I
no,
think in
no.
every company, those people with the green eyes might already be there, and they're like, "Oh man, I wish we could do something." And I think opening this discussion creates an opportunity for people to be heard, to pick up some good practices, and just start navigating towards a healthier version of our production.
Well, I've been in companies that are like large and well-known companies, and I've been part of some of these like green organizing teams in the past.
Wow.
And we do get some support, some financial support. One company I worked at, we were really focused on making sure that like every floor had real silverware that they could use and a dishwasher, and we had
okay.
people that would like clean the dishes and do the dishes and real glasses as opposed to all these disposable things, and real coffee mugs for their coffee drinking, and just simple things like that. And then we would bring in educators for recycling, because each of the local garbage collection companies will have representatives that are happy to come and talk to businesses about like recycling and responsible use of products and these sorts of things. And a lot of that's to help people understand what goes into recycling and what can or can't be recycled. And I mean, it kind of helps people learn to clean their garbage. There's also like initiatives, right? Like you can keep pitching up to your management or to whoever's funding these internal groups, this notion of there's like green certifications for companies.
Okay.
And those are other ways that you can move towards that.
No, I absolutely love that idea, and I think it has multiple benefits. A, it makes the company greener. B, what I observed that these people are actually also somehow community minded. So when they start having these discussions, it's actually good for the workplace culture. It's like one of those hidden forces that creates cohesion, alignment, excitement, motivation, whatever, the good stuff that all the companies are looking for. And by creating green initiatives, they could actually harness this creativity and drive and bright spirit of the individuals, because they could feel that they contribute something that is beyond just the standard stuff. Like, yeah, we need to have salary, like Maslow basics, like, yeah, we need to get money, and then we need to have some sort of connection. It has like a connection for a higher good, which everybody is aspiring for. But if we create these discussions within the companies that enables people not only to have their voices heard, also get creative, and also bringing stuff that is helpful for the company. And guess what? Companies like this attract better talent. They have a better chance of retaining good talent, because that's where people like feel like, okay, we're actually doing something that is meaningful.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So when I was doing this kind of work, I didn't feel like there was a bigger picture, either statewide or national wide kind of organization to join that would give some sort of support or guidance, and it was much more
Among
just
us,
like
figuring
local
stuff out. Yep, that's fine.
local uprising. It could be a good direction to help kind of facilitate and help these things kind of grow and start to exist, to create these kinds of organizations at the state level or
I see that
community level.
this is just this little drip. So I think the wisdom is in the individuals. The wisdom is in the companies. I don't pretend that I have any extraordinary extra knowledge. This is just this like pinch of yeast that you add to the mix, and it kind of starts a very positive transformation in a workplace.
Yeah,
That's
but it
how I
also
see it.
transforms the individual.
Absolutely.
Right? Like for me, I was always diligent in the notion of, well, I sort my recycling and I make sure to put whatever wherever and all of that. But getting involved in this process, working with the local garbage collection recycling companies, starting to understand that, well, it's not just about that. Like you might assume, say, plastic bags or plastic covering is actually recyclable when it isn't. You know, even though it has a label that says recyclable, it's not going to be recycled.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of kind of misconceptions that go with the notion of recycling. There's not good education, not good knowledge generally out there. And just with these like green initiatives in these companies is where I learned a little bit more, well, a lot more about what is and isn't recyclable, what's functional on those levels. And it kind of started to change my perspective of things.
Okay.
But it's still, I don't know, it's still hard, right? Like, as an anecdote, I was just shopping earlier today and I was looking for coconut milk. And the cheapest coconut milk I could buy was in a plastic container. The 10 cans of coconut milk were more expensive by a good amount.
So you kind of get discouraged to buy the environmentally friendly.
Well, yeah, but so you have to make a choice, right? Like every time you show up someplace, you have to make a choice about that.
Yep.
Like the metal, is really recyclable. The plastic, isn't recyclable. And you have to figure out where it might be recyclable, but it's a harder process.
Well, my friends were way more knowledgeable on this than I am. They said, well, plastic recycling is actually a myth. It is technically possible, but it's not being done correctly. And I just had a plane ride somewhere, and I was looking at these documentaries, and it's like, yes, I saw evidence, a tiny Indian company shredding plastic in a very messy process, and then cooking it in a pressure cooker, and then finally getting some paraffin-like substance out of it, which can be reused. And it's a very small operation. And I'm not saying it's not possible. I'm saying, yes, there is a markers on everything, and there is an assumption that these will end up in a process somewhere, going somewhere, and then something magical happens. I think we need to dig into that a little more, what is actually happening to this.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of knowledge that can show up there, I believe. I don't know exactly where proper plastic recycling exists. I think from what I've heard that there are plants in California and some other ones in the United States. But there was also this whole time frame where China was kind of buying our plastics.
I
and
heard
they
this
stopped
as
buying
a
our
horror story.
plastics.
Yeah.
Right? Because we were sending them all this plastic that was dirty. And there was this whole like recycling rules about what you can or can't recycle with plastics.
It assumes perfect collaboration by perfectly trained individuals doing everything correctly, and then...
Well, maybe, yeah. Like you have this idea that everything is going in the proper process. But in, I guess, like offshoring our waste, the whole need for plants to actually try to recycle plastic or to work with plastic have disappeared.
Wait a minute. This is somehow how the Pacific garbage patch kind of being created.
Well, it's
garbage disappeared in a
yeah.
mysterious boat on its way
So
to
now
somewhere
it
else,
becomes
and it's
something
like,
else too,
okay,
right?
let's get rid of it. Okay.
Like now you have this whole like conspiracy side of politics that's going to be like, oh well, that was just a game that China was playing with us to have us like, get rid of all of our recycling plants, and now we're just littered with waste and everything. So now we're looking bad on the. So there's all these conspiracies, there's all these ideas, there's all these like perspectives that can show up.
Okay, in a very, very practical level. Okay, pretend you have a good friend who's like longing for a solution. Like, what would be the 1, 2, 3 thing that you would say? Hey, if you really want to fix this, do this.
Yeah.
this and this.
Well, but it's so weird to even think about that. Like, I have one of those good friends, right? And what does she do? She has an electric car because she sees this as so much cleaner. And she reads about this, and she knows that if she owns this car for X number of years, it'll make up the difference, and then it'll start to become more green. And she does this research. She goes to the grocery store and buys produce and tries to only focus on produce. She brings her own like cloth bags to store produce in and doesn't use the plastic ones that are provided. She's very, very focused on all these little bitty things. And then what's weird to me, right, is you read this and you talk to this person and you get these kind of like, stuff going. Go. And then you go to the other side of the economic equation. Sure. And you look at like your Elon Musk or these other people that fly jets around and produce so much more carbon waste than everybody else, or
and trash in the atmosphere.
But it just kind of keeps going and going, right? Like you and your hundreds of thousands of people can do
good citizen
all
stuff.
Of these really, really good citizen stuff, and on scale, your waste, you're looking at literally, what is it, like 10-20% of all greenhouse gases produced come from you. And then the rest of it is the corporations.
Okay.
So like you as the individual, if every individual was perfect, they would solve 20% of the problem.
Okay. So the attention, what I hear, attention should go back towards the corporation. And that's where I'm at right now to say, well, we actually have to make friends with decision makers in big companies who actually have the ability, while protecting profits and shareholder interests and whatever else is going on, while doing that, actually using the genius, the creativity of their people, plus some external people if needed, to think it through and say, how can we actually play more responsibly and sustainably in this game?
Yeah.
Do you know anybody? Can you think of anybody who's like
There's like information and misinformation too, because there's also this whole like wing of misinformation that's going around saying this whole climate change thing is completely a hoax. There's no reason for us to even think about it or consider it.
And trash is not a problem. If you just walk down the river, look in the river and say, I don't see plastic, especially if I close my eyes.
Well, it's that isolationism kind of thing that shows up everywhere. You know, if you don't drive through the poor neighborhoods, you don't understand that people suffer in America.
Yeah. I used to take kids to my, who were like, sometimes they were a little obnoxious, and I would throw them in the car and say, okay, let's get out of here. And we drove through the tents of Oakland under the highway bridges and said, okay, there are people out there who are way less privileged and just appreciate what we're having.
And those could be some scary places. There could be gunfire and things that just kind of show up.
But going back to how would we solve it?
Yeah.
If you had fairies showing up here and saying, "Ping, Kavi,"
magic, magic.
If you had magic, what kind of directions or ideals or solutions would you be favoring or supporting or encouraging?
I think you have to start looking at like packaging suppliers and really getting into helping packaging suppliers.
Suppliers figure out how to make a meaningful living out of doing something that is a little less wasteful.
But find packaging that is actually biodegradable. That is actually not going to be harmful to the environment.
So what I hear, research and development in the field of biodegradable packaging. I'm sure there is research and development, but I think the production of it is not that scale at this stage.
But I even think that those things exist on some level, and improved products exist on some level, and it just doesn't get into these like leadership places where they make decisions about what packaging is used or isn't used.
Because they only look at the math and say,
but I also feel like that they've looked at the math and they've gotten solutions, and they might have gotten to the least expensive thing for their existing packaging, and now they're looking in other places to save money. They're not even thinking about coming back and revisiting these packaging requirements. So I'm super happy that California is doing this, because California is one of those states that's so big in the United States that its policies actually impact and influence the rest of the country. You know, so as California starts to do this, other states will slowly pick it up.
Okay.
Like California led the way with privacy laws and bringing privacy laws to the U.S. after the EU did these huge privacy laws and
climate.
Yeah,
that's what Schwarzenegger
climate.
said.
They've been
bring the parties together and say, let's just solve this together. It's not your guys or us guys. It's like everybody's problem, and that's what I like about this trash thing. It's like it's everybody's problem, and let's just kind of start coming together and find ways that work.
But
And
yeah, but
that'd
literally
be nice.
companies don't want to do this.
Why?
Like there's well, so one of the things that always sticks in the back of my mind is that documentary, "Who Killed the Electric Car," right? And this was about
Wait, we have electric car.
This was about California mandating electric cars. I think it was in the 80s, where they required automotive producers to create electric cars at a certain percentage and to be able to sell them. So they actually had like the Chevy Volt or something like that in the 80s in California. And it was a popular car for people that got it and had it. But the car company refused to actually sell them to anybody. You could only lease these and not purchase them. Because they had this motivation where they wanted to show this government that this government doesn't understand business and the government is wrong in trying to mandate these business practices.
So I'm not looking for those companies.
No, I understand that. But what I'm getting at is you have to really like look for ways that you can change perspective of people in business to not feel like they're being bossed or told what they're doing and give them options and opportunities to.
I'm 100% with you on that, and I think that this should be funny, inspiring, and it's like, hey, this should not be a.
That's like a cautionary
forcing
tale.
you. It's like it's just one of those things that I am 100% convinced that if I imagine this normal distribution curve, that okay, there are all these companies and they're this like a super evil companies who just really want to kill you and they just want you dead and whatever. We don't talk to those. Let them do their thing. But I think at the other end of the curve, there must be companies with leaders who are like, yeah, wouldn't it be nice? But they just don't have the time. They don't have the resources. They don't have the bandwidth to worry about this thing. But imagine if you kind of showed up to them and said, well, okay, XYZ, this is working. This is how it can be done. Would you be interested? And creating programs around that with their own people, it shouldn't cost too much to them. And say, okay, let's just think it through. These are the fundamental principles in the hands of an innocent, unassuming consumer. Your product or its packaging should not be turned into toxic waste. One. Second, producing it should not only not harm your profits, but it should actually contribute to better profits. Wouldn't it be nice to say, hey, can you do a better outcome with less wasteful operation? Because that's when people come together, and this is how history worked, that people come together, they have a problem, they kind of tinker with it, and then they come up with a solution that is superior than the previous one. And even this is how we got to the single-use plastic. It was better. It's a great idea. We just haven't figured out what happens when it leaves, and oops, man, these guys are throwing it away. It gets in the river and it gets into the ocean, then we can't go to the beach because it's full of trash. But it was not known back then. Now it's known, so I think you need to walk back from the shore, up the river, to the shop, to the truck that brings the product, all the way back to the factory and whoever produced the raw materials, and say, hey, along these lines, who's out there contributing to this mess, and how can we actually help them to think it through and just do better work.
So what kind of data exists to support this concept of who's producing what, or who's producing or contributing to this mess?
I don't want to necessarily point fingers to one of the biggest beverage producers, but it's known that with the single-use plastic production, they are the biggest contributors. And it's not because they are mean, malicious people, because it's something just like, it's just one of those things. It happens, and I think nobody actually kind of encouraged them to perhaps do otherwise.
I guess the question I was trying to ask was, like if you start to who's doing data like analysis.
I haven't met them yet.
Of waste in general.
I haven't met them
and can
yet.
say that 20% of waste is attributed to beverage companies and 10% of waste is contributed to this or that. Or
I think we have some data on that, which shows what companies are actually contributing to the plastic trash. So that data is available.
Okay.
I got it from a friend. I can't quote this, and I don't think we should. But I think that's material is available. If somebody's interested, just let us know, and I'll send you something on this. Okay?
Yeah, I don't think specific companies are important, but I think like industries are important.
I think industries are important, and that's why I was using beverages
Yeah.
and also single, fast-moving consumer
Yeah.
goods, like shampoo packaging. Okay, there are different ways of packaging shampoo, and it's tricky. Like, how would you package your shampoo? It could come in a, I don't know, in a
Oh,
big tub. I was just like,
but you see it. No, but you see it starting to show up in different places.
Yeah.
I've recently started to see shampoo show up as
packaging.
like, well, you have your individual bottles. You have, I know in Europe, like in Germany specifically, they have machines. You go to the grocery store, you bring your individual bottle, it fills the bottle,
Yep.
so you just reuse the same
Yeah,
bottle.
and your shampoo bottle is attached to your shampoo, your shower wall, and you're just like refilling it.
There can be that. But also I've seen more and more packaging of like going back to like the milk carton or something that's more of a waxed paper as opposed to a plastic.
Yeah,
Shipping massive
Tetra Pak.
quantities, shipping refills
Yep,
to
yeah.
the hard plastic that you have.
Yeah, my trouble with that. So when you have the wax paper, it also usually have an aluminum or like a metal layer in it,
Yeah.
and there's no way that's ever going to be
Recycled
separated.
properly,
And it's
yeah.
like it should sit in a landfill for probably a couple of 100 years before it kind of gets anywhere near to a natural form.
Okay.
But have you seen the mushroom movie, the magic fungi on Netflix?
I don't know if I've seen the magic fungi. I've read about mushrooms in different ways.
So there is this crazy man who had this adventure of having a very special relationship to fungus, and he kind of now he's in the process of creating fungi products that are good for specific use cases. For example, termites. He has a product, or he's developing a product that can be used against termites, which is like, wow, natural solution against natural problems. Like, I love it. And he also had some solutions for cleaning up oil spills. Which is like, you can kind of wax in, wax out with your oil spill. You can throw some sand on it, but he actually figured that there are some funny mushrooms who would like just like, or yum, 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 yum. And I think that's cool.
Yeah, mushrooms are fascinating. There's also fascinating on the health side, and just kind of helping the body heal and do all these other things too. It's a fascinating world that I think we're slowly getting into.
So my interest would be like, and again, just on a positive note, I flew through Seattle. I found a little restaurant, and in the restaurant, everything was biodegradable. All their packaging, food was good, and all their packaging is like. I went back to the manager and said, "Do I see correctly that this stuff is like all biodegradable?" It's like, yep. So there are some companies out there who are already doing it.
Yeah.
And there are some other companies, as you said, who are producing the packaging that enables this. Like, okay, if I throw it in my garden, I come back in 3 weeks, it's not going to be there because it's going to be gone. And I think for me that's exciting. How do I combine a new version of supply chain, a new version of product packaging, which creates products and packaging that if I happen to throw it away in your garden, it's not going to be a problem. You're not going to shoot me.
Papa, I'm taking your
Fifi, it's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's good addition.
No, I guess part of me wants to come back to the politics side then, because it almost sounds like you're saying, "Hey, look, no, but let's make every city like Seattle, where Seattle's this a very very unique place. I've lived in Seattle. It's super unique. It's very, I guess, liberal oriented in some ways, but it's also not liberal oriented. It's conservative as well. But their focus is solely on a lot of these environmental effects, these environmental products and things, and you'll see this over and over and over again in Seattle, specifically in restaurants. They're very, very focused on everything comes in compostable. Like every packaging is compostable, every silverware is compostable, every takeout thing is compostable. They don't use plastic. They just are completely focused on this. But Seattle also has a much higher like minimum wage. They balance costs in different ways. They do all of these things that are different, but it's really, really focused on things being more expensive to pay for, like things being better for everybody.
Well, that brings us back to the taxation. So if you say California gets to the place where they say, we're gonna have some special tax, like it's like the tobacco tax or the liquor tax to say, hey, if you have this weird habit, this is what you want to do, then you have to pay a little extra because we have to run the show that has some consequences from your behavior. It's not that you're a bad person, it's just like your choices impacting all of us, and therefore we need to balance it out with our means. And I think that's, introducing differentiated taxes on that, good. My favorite is this reverse engineering of everybody's production process for better packaging and better product recyclability. You said something about in-company forums to discuss it and come up with better solutions. That's a good,
just
good
companies that allow, I guess, like group organization, because that's even kind of unusual for companies to even support like internal communities, depending on where you are in the U.S.
Come on, okay, yeah. I can
Yeah,
imagine companies where you can't
yeah.
go and have your pee break because you have to be clocking in and out. But I've seen companies in good parts of the United States where you have everything you need for your work,
Yeah,
and
Yeah,
it's just a different
but-
mentality.
it is.
And guess which companies are richer? Which companies are doing better economically, which have a higher retention of good talent? These things go a long way.
Yeah, I guess, but some of those companies that don't do these things, they still bring in billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars. They're still like super wealthy.
And they say, if I get, well, here's my trap with that. If you can get away bringing $1 billion at the expense of people not actually enjoying working with you, and what you produce is kind of a problem for the environment, then you need to find out about the law of karma. Because what comes around goes around, and it's like you cannot usually do it endlessly, and then in life there are some consequences, and there are consequences on the individual level, and there's some consequences on the social level, and there are some consequences on the global level. And then when you look around, like if mom was mother nature, and everybody wants mom to be happy, but when mom shows up upset, then everybody kind of like ducks and just hides. And when mom sends out like, okay guys, you've been playing nasty, now you have to clean up your room. Like what mom is going to do? She's going to send you tsunamis, she's going to send you a bunch of tornadoes and hurricanes and whatever, and say, oh, this cannot go on. Like what we going to do about it?
I love
Wakey.
I love that perspective because it's a very optimistic perspective. But like you also then now you're getting into this whole notion of faith almost, because what so many people see is that this karmic retribution doesn't necessarily show up in their generation. So they're hopeful that it'll show up in their children,
You might be get away
or
with
their children's generation,
Yep,
right?
I see that.
But so like a lot of that shows up because you have communities across the United States or across the world where the only industry is this exploitative industry. So these people who are literally
with no
financially
choice.
trapped because their only access to things like healthcare come through this industry, and this only industry in there and where they were born, where they've grown up, is this very exploitative industry that doesn't pay them enough to be able to move to another part of the country. That doesn't pay them enough. They don't have this economic mobility
No, I get that.
in our country
It's
or
easy
in
for
other
us.
countries.
It's easy for us, and I
So
think we should be considerate.
those of us that have like
the option.
gotten into careers that allow more financial benefit, more economic mobility, that allow more choice. Sure, it's easy for us to look at some of that, but when you see like there are literal communities throughout the South, throughout the United States that have this where there's 1, 2, 3 industries and people are trapped and they can't go someplace else.
Okay, but again, I'm going with the tipping point and say,
No, I
you're
get
probably not going to start on that end. And if there's somebody showing up on that end that says, well, we actually want to do something with it, sure, let's go. But I think we should perhaps have these conversations in those parts of the country, on those industries, in those cities, where just the circumstances are a little more advantageous for this kind of discussion.
I guess, but like I just saw AOC tweet. 60% of the people that are employed in the United States make less than $40,000 a year. Most of those people are going to be in these economically disadvantaged areas, in these trapped places.
Yep.
Right? If that's a small majority that's still a majority that you're looking at.
And it is a problem by itself. But honestly, so I wish we could solve that as well.
But you can a little bit, right? Like we're talking about changes in politics and changes in policies. If we get to the point where we decouple healthcare from employment, now all of a sudden people have economic mobility they've never had because they can have access to healthcare without having to work for some exploitative company.
Which
to do
actually
that.
makes them unhealthy, which requires them to have healthcare, which is a different
But there are these like on the policy side, on the politics side, there are these places you can go to create more potential for opportunity for people, which then creates more opportunity for people and allows people to like step up and make different changes.
Papa.
Thank you.
No, it's my dad.
It's really, I don't know if you're paying attention, but you probably don't. That's great.
Thank you.
We got the letter, and Frida brought it. Thank you, Frida.
You can always cut it.
That's okay now, and it's good. It's good. I like it. One, it's for signature. Oh, good. So, is there anything else we need to say today?
I don't know. I think that you see so much. Like it's a small group of people, but it's a empowered group of people that are looking for this, that are making these changes.
These are the crazy ones.
I am obsessed with trying to see better packaging and trying to see better things on the supply side. I love every time I read about somebody that's cleaning up the ocean, cleaning up the rivers, all of these great innovative things that are happening. Like just the stuff we saw, I read about where they're able to use just air bubbles to shift and move trash in a specific direction to help clean up rivers. And it was a Scandinavian country, right?
I think it was Netherlands, but
the Netherlands. So somewhere in Europe they're doing this really beautiful thing, and you can start to do this all over the world, and it's just bubbles.
That's what I'm looking. So my hope and desire that by having this conversation, start collecting some ideas, mapping these ideas, we can actually get to a place where we say, okay, we see the bright ones, we see good examples, we see those companies, we see those innovative people who created something that is helpful, and then we can actually point other people's direction, say, hey, listen, they can figure this out, we can figure this out, and how we can scale these solutions, because sometimes these people need investors, like whatever we have, sometimes you need investors, sometimes you need connections, sometimes you need new ideas, sometimes you need research funding, I don't know. Connect these people, like, oh yeah, I have an idea, oh, we have some money, okay, how are we going to make it into a new company that is going to create new products or new solutions that actually drifts us in a better direction. Cool.
Yeah, I love it. I think there's at least a few things we've talked about where it'd be good to like research for or try to provide like more like broad support. Like I love the idea of I loved the community I was in at that company working towards green initiatives. There was just sort of a lot of haphazard kind of we're not sure what to do, but we want to do this, we want to do that. Let's
bring it
designate
together,
somebody to do some research and figure out how this works or how that works. But just creating a more like a nonprofit that this could be some place that this company goes to, or that these people can access and get more consistent information, and get more support or more ideas for how to run a proper green group, how to apply for or request like green certifications for companies. These could be huge benefits. I mean, just the fact that we had a budget where we could go to Goodwill and buy silverware and dishes and things for our floor, and walk around when we see people getting like bad packaging, just say, hey, we're buying this. Use this. Like here, you use these renewable things. We have dishwashers. You just like recommending for people and getting champions everywhere. Is a great thing to do, because
how did that change the culture of the company? How did people feel from just having fun?
Well, you just see it. You just see people realize, oh, well, I can do this. Like there are people that won't use it, and there are people that will use it. But even moving a small percentage towards using the green alternative is a huge boon. It gets people thinking about it. It gets people seeing it in their own world and in their own places. And then, when they're at the grocery store and they're making a decision between the plastic coconut milk and the metal coconut milk, they're like, well, but it's 50 cents more per ounce or whatever, or not even that much. That's a lot, but you get the idea, right? Like, It's okay to buy the
priced
metal.
wrongly. Yes, it's priced incorrectly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just for that.
Cool. I heard pricing. I heard supply chain. I heard corporate communities to think it through. I heard some degree of politics involved in this. What else did we say?
Well, I think it's just that, like, you have to have that ground up initiative sometimes to move people. That's
Yep.
so just like in the U.S. we have this we're still in these cusps of these like very populist movements, which are these very ground up movements trying to shift and shape and move our country in different directions. And you would do the same thing with a company. You can have these like very populist kind of movements, these ground up things to like shift and shape and move your company in different ways. You see goods and bads.
It's beautiful.
Sometimes it works. Sometimes the company lashes out. But I feel like every
that's
time I
why-
see companies lashing out, they don't really get good press around that.
That's one thing. The other thing is that's why I'm personally looking for those leaders with the green light in their eyes and say, I think we can do better. I think let's think this through and let's just dedicate a little bit of time of our otherwise genius creative people to find out how could we apply some of these principles in-house and how could we just make a roadmap where like little by little, baby steps, little contribution, little interventions, we just start navigating into a better direction for everybody without actually ruining our profits or actually creating like epic stories within the company that we can actually also use to attract new customers and attract new talent because people, this is good stuff.
How do you bring this to like the part of the world or even the part of America that isn't the like leftist
I don't.
states,
No.
the leftist
I don't think
places,
it's a leftist, rightist, whatever it is thing. It's a question. I think in every country, in every company, there are these people out there. Do they get the attention? Do they get the support? No, probably they don't. If they do, they actually do good stuff. So I'm looking for those who are like, yes, we would like to do something.
Yeah.
Yes, how are we gonna do this? And say, okay, let's help you through this. Like think through, bring the people together, start some initiatives that could be helpful, and see what happens. And eventually, like by going through this, companies actually kind of start just flowering as and doing better than before.
Yeah.
Cool.
No, I like it. I just
Kavi, my friend, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for the discussion. And for all of you out there, if you get inspired, let us know. Ciao.
Absolute pleasure. Bye bye.